Thank you for tuning in to the SkillsAware podcast. We are a human-centered, AI-powered skills recognition engine transforming how people and organizations understand and grow their capabilities. Each episode features insightful conversations with industry leaders, experts, and innovators who share their knowledge, experiences, and ideas on workforce skills, skills recognition, skills literacy, artificial intelligence, and so much more.
Well, welcome, Jon Mason, to the SkillsAware webinar series on why standards matter and what our standards are all about. This is, I think, now the fourth or fifth in the series. So if anybody's wanting to look back at the journey to here, but in some ways, this is the one I've been looking forward to the most, because I think a lot of what we've covered is the background, and today we're going to get into the detail about standards. But first, let me just acknowledge that I'm on Kaurna country, and want to acknowledge elders past, present, and emerging, and also the connection to the land, and also acknowledge all the lands that everyone involved in this seminar are on. Now, Jon, we just met last week, right?
Yeah. Well, that's right, Mark. 30 years ago, or whatever it is. But thanks for inviting me to this session. I've been tracking what you've been doing in recent years. So we haven't had enough conversations, but it's a really interesting space that you're in. Let me also, just before we get the conversation going, acknowledge that I'm up here in the top end of Australia and on Larrakia country, saltwater country, and it's been raining quite a bit lately. It's my favourite season. So that's where I am.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, so Jon, let's be a bit more specific about this, because you and I are very familiar with each other. We first met talking about education standards, and that was in the 90s, when I was involved in the very early days of what people have come to know as SCORM and the ADL organisation, which went on to become Rastiki, and now work with One EdTech and all that world. And if I recall correctly, now I should introduce you as Associate Professor at CDU. And what are you doing right now? What's your scope these days?
So I've got a mixed bag here. I'm an academic at CDU, Mark. I do a bit of teaching, I do a bit of research, a bit of admin. I've got a lot of PhD students, so I really enjoy the PhD work. My students are from all over the place: Indonesia, Bangladesh, Pakistan, India, China, you name it. It's really interesting work. Although, having said that, and it is really interesting work, I don't get to do the standards work much in my academic role. I still wear the hat. I've been wearing a Standards Australia hat for, 25 years, working on national standards and interfacing with the various international committees, ISO and what have you. But that's what I've been doing. And you hark back to the early days. I guess a bit of context here is I got involved in all of this stuff when I was doing the initial work on setting up Edna Online, Education Network Australia, and we discovered that we were wanting to organise educational learning resources online for the education and training sector in Australia, and we discovered that we needed a standard way of describing that stuff, and that was my induction into MetaData, and I got involved in the IEEE and then the IMS and then ISO in quick succession, and then ADL with SCORM. There was 4 different groups I was participating in, and they all had different governance structures, and of course there was the DCMI. Everybody was doing this stuff differently. Everybody was doing consensus building differently. Everybody was talking about vocabularies in a different way. But that's where I started, and it's amazing to look back, and it's nearly 30 years.
Yeah, and I hate to admit, you were one of my early counsel in that when we were building out LMSs, and we wanted to make sure we could publish content that wasn't just unique. And sadly, I think people still build hard-coded content into LMSs, and that causes all sorts of cost blowouts and problems. So that leads to this. My first question really is, you and I lived this. Some people live this. Other people. This whole series started because I had a talk with a couple of senior people working on the new national skills taxonomy and on other related matters, and they had no idea about meta standards. In fact, I went to a consultation with the national skills taxonomy, and I said to the consultant who was leading the group, we should be dealing with this around metadata, not the actual content. And he said, "What's metadata?" Like, there's a level of people just aren't aware, right? So why do they matter? Why does it matter?
Well, they don't matter to everybody, of course, as you know, and they matter to you and me. But they do matter in terms of building systems that are able to talk to each other and to share data and share information and then build value. We're living in an information-rich, data-rich kind of world, and we need structures. We need infrastructure that supports what it is that we're doing, and metadata is kind of fundamental to that. Whether it's metadata standards or not, just think about XML. XML is it's all about metadata. All the tags are all about metadata. Everything in the web. The web is full of metadata.
Well, it is metadata, isn't it?
Structures. Yeah. It's just all about metadata. Tags are everywhere. Everything's marked up. It's all about data.
Yeah.
And so
that's a good point. Can we just slow down on that one?
Yeah.
It's data about data.
Yes.
That's what metadata is.
Yes.
So, I always think back to what you and I know as the Dublin Core, but that was the era in the 80s when library cards became digital, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
I always go back to the library card as an idea that what we need is structured, boxes so that all of the content is standardized. Is that a good way to start thinking about this?
That's one good way, one good metaphor to start thinking about it, and it's also good to think about it in terms of efficiency, right? We can have a whole bunch of information in a document, but we can come up with one key word or two or three keywords that can really help us focus on the aboutness of that content. Right.
It's the content about the content.
It's about the content. Data about the content. So it's referring. So it's about semantics. Obviously metadata standards are all about syntax as well, but semantics are important here. We're talking about resources, we're talking about things, events, whatever they are.
Yeah.
And we're trying to describe them in an efficient, standardized way, that drawing on standardized vocabularies, so that we can share information really quickly, easily. So
a follow-on question for me then is, why do people, I still work with a lot of people who are hard coding content into single systems.
Yes.
And therefore, in order to move it to another system, they've got to repeat that exercise, right?
Well, that's right. That's because they invest time in learning how to do something and don't want to give up on it. I used to be an IT support guy at Melbourne Uni many years ago, and prior to the emergence of Microsoft, prior to the emergence of Apple, actually, and Windows-based systems, and everybody was using a word processor called WordPerfect, and they were doing it, on the green screen, and they'd learnt all sorts of powerful keystrokes in sequence
Shortcuts.
to do things.
Mm.
And initially, I was surprised at a number of people who didn't want to learn about Windows and how to do point and click, because they'd already invested in this other thing that worked. And so that metaphor still prevails, and of course the web, all the technologies that we're spoiled by. We can do stuff. We can do so much on the web, and so why would we want to bother about this other step here to do things in a standardized kind of way? And a lot of people don't want to know about standards. They feel straitjacketed by the thought. A lot of academics don't want to know about standards.
Yeah, because it is a discipline, right?
It's a discipline. It's an extra requirement. It's something else we have to do, to think about. Yeah.
So some people on this call might be aware of SCORM or one of those standards. People always say to me, what does SCORM stand for? And I always remember that, Shareable Content Object Reference Model.
Yeah.
So it's a way of chunking content and sharing it between systems, right? If you're not using a SCORM module, you can't move it to another system, which means you've got to do it all again, right?
Not easily. You can't. I mean, there's always a kludge. We can always do it in another way. There's lots of ways to do stuff, but let's try to do things in an elegant and in an efficient, interoperable kind of way.
Would it be fair to say it's not just that? It's because people think that the way they're doing it now is their expert way, and the idea that they're going to use a standard even sometimes diminishes their personal expertise. Do you think that's a factor?
That'd be one factor for sure, Mark. It's what I was saying before about investing time into something. You get good at it.
And everybody thinks theirs is better. One of the things I find is there's so many standards, right? Many of them doing the same thing, and we'll come later in the talk about skills and standardizing skills. But there are so many ways of there are so many standards in the organization, and even that's a funny thing because different standards bodies compete with each other. They think they're doing it better than the other guy, right?
Well, they do, and there's various phases in the history of all of this, and we went through a phase 20 years ago. There was the open wars. My openness is better than your openness. Whether it's open source or community source or what's the limits of your openness, and then we had a way to classify openness with Creative Commons. So ain't that interesting that there are these levels of openness that can now be classified and licensed.
And so Creative Commons, for those who don't know,
in a structured way,
is an international convention for sharing content that is an alternative to copyright in a way. That's my simplest explanation.
Copyleft.
That's it. Copyleft. It's copyleft. But there are all of these standards, they're the legal standards. Why does before we get on to skills and maybe a little discussion about this new idea of the National Skills Taxonomy and other classification questions and why standards are important, why does interoperability matter? Is it just efficiency?
It's a simple metaphor. If anybody listening has travelled much and they like their laptop to be able to plug into the local power supply, they would know that if you don't have the right plug, you don't get your power. It's that simple, and it's all about interfaces that talk to each other and protocols that make that the efficient connectivity. But actually, the interoperability story, Mark, in my view, has changed over the years. When I first got involved in all of this, yes, of course, vocabularies and taxonomies mattered, and they still matter a lot. But the focus was really all around content interoperability and systems interoperability. It was all about the systems and the architecture that described all of that stuff was all about systems and systems components. And what I reckon has changed over the years is that those big architectures that describe the space are really now what we've got at the center of that now is the user. You know, the learner, the trainer, whoever it is, but the person is in the middle of this architecture all of a sudden, and it never used to be like that. But alongside that,
in terms of their personal needs,
in terms of their personal needs, but in terms of them being in terms of them also being monetized by big tech, because in essence we are all tools of big tech in the data that we produce for them that gets monetized.
Well, in the simplest term, though, picking up an earlier metaphor you said, we take for granted that everyone uses a pointy little arrow called a cursor, and it's an arrow, right?
Yes, yeah.
It could be a circle or a.
All these things get to
it's standardized as
it's
an arrow.
standardized, just like QR codes are standardized, just like barcodes are standardized. They're standardized bits and pieces in this data and information-rich environment, this digital environment, which is becoming more and more complex all the time. We're absolutely immersed in it.
Yeah,
and so interoperability absolutely matters.
Yeah, it's let me say too that we're going to have time for a couple of questions at the end. So, and please put them in the chat, as Chris has indicated, if you've got some. Nice to see everybody here today, and also the audience that will be perhaps picking up on this afterwards as we distribute it widely. Jon, there is now you and I haven't talked about this, so we haven't preempted this conversation, but there is a whole lot of work going on to create a national skills taxonomy.
Yes.
Perhaps I've lived a bit more in the vocational space than you have in terms of training packages and all that stuff. But the concern I've got about that work is the resources are all going into the content, not into the standards that they might conform with. And so what I'm concerned about, and I'd love to unpack this with you a little bit, what I'm concerned about is we'll end up with a fixed list of skills and no way of having interoperability, and really difficult to change. Like what if somebody invents a new skill? How do we add that? That kind of thing. Now I view that as a bit simplistic, but have you thought about this? Have you been across the National Skills Taxonomy? If you haven't, then I'm sure you've thought about this in other contexts where people want to do, they want to build a list and rather than build a standard. Yeah.
Well, a list is a good place to start, Mark.
Yeah.
And in fact, with all the work, I continue to do this work in Standards Australia and ISO, and I'm participating in a range of different committees, IT committees. And there's an I in the IT. It's not all just tech. It's not tech. And so when all the work that I've participated in, it all begins with people agreeing on scope. On what it is we need to do, what the problem is we need to solve, and so there's usually lots of conversations, and when we unpack the conversations, when we're nodding heads with each other, we're agreeing, we discover there's a couple of key terms here that we have different understandings about, and so we have to start thinking about the terminology that we're using, and we have to agree on key terms. What do they mean in this context? When we're creating standards, the standards need to be fit for purpose, right? And so we're not looking to define something for all time, for all contexts. When we're defining a standard, we're defining it in context. So the terminology matters, and so lists of words, lists of statements that describe things. That's like base one. That's base one.
But it is base one, isn't it? Like that is, and credit to the government that they are actually doing this. Like this is there's nothing wrong with what's going on. The worry I have is how they become useful and over a long period of time. And so what would you see is needing to happen next? Like if there's an agreed definition of a skill, for example, And if there's an agreed starting list, what might happen after that?
So there's a whole lot of other tech things that can happen with that terminology, and there's the whole world of DOIs, digital object identifiers, and things like that, and defining terms in standardized ways where they can be looked up by machines, not just people. And so there might be a skills. There might be a term. Project management, for example, but we need to unpack that. What does that actually mean? Yes, it's a transferable skill, but we need a statement about that, and keywords and various attributes of that term which get defined and which could be looked up.
Yeah, and you said earlier it starts with a semantic analysis, or let's unpack that a bit. Project management: why, what, how.
Yes. Yeah.
Where, when, how much,
Yes. Yeah.
They're all, there's a little metadata schema right there, right?
Yes.
If you had fields that had all those things, that would be the beginning of something, wouldn't it?
It would. Yeah.
There's a lot of skills standards work going on. Again, you and I didn't have a pre-conversation, but the IEEE got a standard for skills. I happen to know the number, 1484.20.4. There you go.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to outsmart you, John. Did you know about that one?
Oh that's a competency definitions standard that has a bit of history to it, I think. Yes, and that's all about. As I understand that particular standard, that's all about how the how of encoding those competency statements, and not so much about the actual competencies themselves or the skills themselves. It's about the structure of how we encode that information and how we share it between systems. So there's an interesting point that you raise there, and it is a very interesting function about what that standard is serving. It's serving more than just a standardized way of describing something. It's serving the need for how we actually transport standardized descriptions or share standardized descriptions between systems.
Yeah, it's a good thing. And I find that weird because IEEE is an engineering standard.
It is.
They started as an engineering organization, like a USB plug is an IEEE thing.
Without IEEE, everybody in Australia likes to think that Wi-Fi came from CSIRO and all of that, but it's an IEEE standard, and the IEEE has 500,000 professional members. It's a serious organisation, and they do a lot of really amazing stuff, and they're also producing really amazing work at the moment around in the world of AI, around algorithmic bias and all that sort of stuff. But so it's engineering, but there's lots of facets to engineering, I guess.
Absolutely, that's good. And other work that's going on. Credential Engine in the US have formed this CTDL, which is like a standard. It's like a clearinghouse standard for other standards. Why would you do that? Why would you need to double up?
It's not necessarily doubling up. It's adding value. It's like we have repositories. We have libraries.
Yeah.
There's places where we've got collections of things.
Yeah.
So we have a digital repository or a digital clearinghouse. A digital. It's the meta. It's the next level up of what value can we add here. So a lot of people in this space. So let's bring it all together. Yeah.
Well, because sometimes standards are built for different purposes, aren't they? And you can combine them in a way and achieve more. It's like some is greater than the parts. Yeah.
We don't need to reinvent the wheel, and we should be leveraging work from others. There's a term that's used a lot these days, and I don't. Some days I don't really like it, but. Everybody talks about the digital ecosystem or digital standards ecosystem, and they've appropriated that word because it kind of sounds nice that we're all working together. But you know that it is true. There's a lot of activity in this space of bodies that are trying to define standardized approaches that are going to work. And yes, it is competitive. You know, it takes a while for things to shake out and for the market to decide, well, this is what we really want. Yeah. But you know, not all standardized efforts sort of land where we would want them to land. I don't know what. I've just finished reading Tim Berners-Lee's book about, you know, his story of inventing the web and all the different moments, the different protocols that he tried to sort of bring in, and some got there, some didn't.
Yeah.
You know, when
he's
someone
like a rock
him,
star, isn't he? Everyone thinks he was an overnight success, but he's really he was the sum of 20 years of failure, really.
Wonderful book, highly recommended, by the way.
Yeah, I haven't read it yet. I look forward to it. And for those who don't know, Tim Berners-Lee was he's behind the W3C Foundation, and he was the one who first really documented HTML as which connected documents. He created a standard to connect documents, and and the world has changed. It's like incredible. I think it's a great book to read. And one of the things that I think, again, one of the requests about doing this webinar came from a senior person saying, well, I don't understand what you're talking about. And I know that there may be some people on the call here who are experts, and some people on the call today or watching this who go, oh, those guys just got all techo on us, right? So it doesn't take much for people to feel like you become all techo, right? But the truth is, there's somewhere in the middle here where people could become better educated about this, or better informed, and perhaps even senior leadership could become better informed about the importance of this. Have you got any thoughts on that, ways in which people could become better informed without diving too deep?
Well, without diving too deep, read Tim Berners-Lee's book. There's a good one, because we all know and love the web. It's part of our daily interactions, and you know, the backstory of how it all came to be, and all the politics along the way is really interesting, and there's a lot of stuff in it about you know, big visions of infrastructure that works and serves everybody for the common good. You know, a lot of all that stuff is in that book. Yet, you know, there's also you know, documented things that didn't work out. But look, I don't know. I mean, this has caused me a bit of grief. Your question, actually, Mark, over the years. How do we connect this conversation? How do we have it with in a simple way for people to get interested in participating? You know, it's not everybody wants to know about this stuff. They just want to engage with things that work. You know?
Well, and the thing is, that people want it to work, and then there's this next step was, well, how did things work well together? It's because you have standards, right? You skip that step. You know, imagine walking into a library and having to read every book to find the bit that you wanted, right?
Well, imagine
crazy.
Imagine stepping on a plane for a flight that, you know, none of the components had been standardized. Would you really step onto that plane? I don't think so. So.
No. And even down to where you're going to, which, you know, it's funny, isn't it? That's not a bad metaphor either. A map, you know, we used to read a map with, you know, a number on the one axis and a letter on the other, and it gave us a quadrant. And nowadays we have various detailed standards that go down to like 1 meter, you know, which is the GPS kind of coding, which is, imagine if you were back in the day where all we had was like the quadrant level. You just, you know, you could get within a mile or something, but you still don't know where you're going. So, you know, the standards need to evolve and be fit for purpose. You've raised all those great points today. We're coming to the end, and I just wonder if there's one question anyone has. And you know, just for me, I love every minute I ever spend with you, John, and it inspires me to go and think deeper and work harder at trying to make this stuff work, and so that's been fantastic, you know.
Well, thanks, Mark. I guess we could have gone into a whole lot more detail.
Yeah.
Have we got a question coming through? No, not yet.
No.
Yeah, well, there is a lot more detail in all of this, and the devil is in the detail as we start to unbundle information, information that we share, digital information, the digital environment. It's so complex. And and the other point I'd like to just make here, and I make this in my academic work, is that this digital environment that we take for granted, a lot of us, is not just a bunch of tools and services.
Yeah.
It's far more complex than that, and there is a lot of infrastructure that is there that supports all this stuff, and we're embedded in it.
Yeah. And my studies are in the culture of it as well, the sociology of it. So is a lot to what's going on, and that we do take for granted. So anyway, well, thanks for that, Jon, today. And it's an absolute delight. And for me, you're a bit of a national treasure. So I hope that's not aging you or anything.
No. Well, thanks, Mark.
Yeah. Very good. So we'll finish up at that point. Thanks, everyone, for coming today. Hope you've got something from it. And I know Jon and I always enjoy this conversation. So so thanks for coming.
Yeah. Happy for a follow-up anytime, Mark.
Yeah. Great.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning into this SkillsAware podcast episode. Don't forget to follow us on your podcast app so you don't miss a thing, and be sure to visit our website at skillsaware.com to learn more.